Today I'm going to be talking about Ēkāṇma Pañcakam, which is the last poem that Bhagavan composed. How Bhagavan came to compose it was in February 1947. One day there was someone who brought, I can't remember which work it was, some Tamil text which was composed in Vemba meter. And either they had recited it there or somehow there was a discussion about it. And during the course of discussion, someone asked Bhagavan, is it true that Kavyaganta wasn't able to compose any verses in Vemba meter? Vemba is a particular meter in Tamil. Then Bhagavan said, yes, it's true. And then Bhagavan told what happened. He said many years earlier, Kavyaganta one day was talking about the greatness of Sanskrit poetry and was saying that there's no poetry in the world equal to Sanskrit poetry. And Bhagavan listened patiently, and then Bhagavan said, actually, Tamil prosody is far more sophisticated than Sanskrit prosody. In comparison, Sanskrit prosody is fairly simple. And then Bhagavan said, Bhagavan told Kavyaganta the basic meter in Tamil is Vemba. Vemba literally means white verse. It's white in the sense of very simple, very plain. Why it's called that is it contains all the basic principles of Tamil prosody. Ēkāṇma, Moṇe, Tale, and so many other principles. So in Tamil, someone is not considered a poet unless they can compose Vemba. So Bhagavan explained to him the rules of Vemba and asked him whether he could compose a Vemba in Sanskrit. I suspect Bhagavan did this to put down his pride because he was so proud about Sanskrit literature. So Kavyaganta struggled and wasn't able to compose any Vemba in Sanskrit. And then Bhagavan said, well, try in Telugu, your mother tongue. And he tried in Telugu, that also he failed. So Bhagavan told that story. Then Suri Nagama, who was there, she asked Bhagavan, has anyone composed any Vembas in Telugu? And Bhagavan said, no, I don't think so. Then she asked Bhagavan, can you do so? And then Bhagavan said, what do I have to write about? He brushed aside the idea. But I think Murugana maybe prompted Bhagavan a little. But anyway, the next day when Suri Nagama came, Bhagavan showed her 3 Vembas that he had written in Telugu. And he had also translated them into to Tamil. And then after that, he composed another 2 verses, making up 5. And as I say, he composed in Telugu and in Tamil more or less simultaneously. And later he also composed it in Malayalam. Some people asked him to compose it in Sanskrit also, but he didn't do so. But once, many years earlier, he had composed 1 Vemba in Sanskrit, because when Lakshman Sharma was wanted to translate ūṇarndu into Sanskrit, he was hoping he could prompt Bhagavan to do the translation. So knowing he couldn't actually manage, he tried to compose the first verse in a Vemba. And seeing him struggling, Bhagavan then composed the first Mangalam verse of ūṇarndu in Sanskrit, in Vemba meter. And Lakshman Sharma was hoping he could then prompt Bhagavan to do all the rest, but Bhagavan said, no, you can translate in some other meter that you find easier. So Bhagavan has actually composed Vembas in all 4 languages. I once asked Sadhuam why, when Kavyaganta was such a renowned poet, why he wasn't able to compose any verses in Vemba. And Sadhuam said, well, it's a matter of familiarity. But as Tamilians, we are so used to hearing Vembas, with so many works in Tamil, whether devotional works, philosophical works, or even secular works. are written in Vemba meter, or variations on the Vemba meter. So he said, we're just so familiar. And he said in his case, Saruman was able to compose Vembas long before he learnt all the rules, because the rules are quite elaborate. But because he had heard so many Vembas, he just was able to recognize the patterns, and he could compose in Vemba. And only later he learnt all the rules for composing. Because Kaviranta wasn't familiar with that, and it was as I say, the principles of Tamil prosody are far more elaborate than Sanskrit prosody. He wasn't able to compose. But anyway, that's how this work came to be composed. But it wasn't, I mean, when Bhagavan writes anything, it's full of meaning. And though he said to Surinagama when she first asked him, what do I have to write about? With a little prompting from Murugan, he actually wrote a poem with very, very deep in meaning. The poem is called Ēkāṇma Pañcakam. Pañcakam simply means a group of 5, meaning a group of 5 verses. Ēkāṇma is normally translated as one self. Eka means one, Atma means self. In Tamil, the Tamil word Ēkāṇma is a Tamil form of the Sanskrit Ēkātma, because in Tamil the itma is not a common combination, so often Sanskrit words take a modified form in Tamil. So in Tamil it's Ēkāṇma Pañcakam, in Sanskrit the equivalent would be Ēkāṇma Pañcakam. In non-philosophical context in Sanskrit, Ēkāṇma is used in the same sense that we use, in English we would say on one's own or by oneself. So it can mean solitude, it can also mean a sole endeavor, doing something. If you do something Ēkāṇma, that means you do it independently without the help of anyone else. In a philosophical context, as I say, people usually translate it as one self, but that it actually has a deeper meaning and significance than that. What it implies is not only but one self, but self is the only one. There is only one self, or there is only one thing, and that is oneself. Atma is often translated in English as the self, but that's a slightly misleading translation, because if you talk about the self, it sounds like it's a thing, but there is no self. Self is not a separate thing. Everything is itself. I am myself are one. This chair in itself are one. The flowers and themselves are one. So self is not a separate thing. It's a word that refers to something. So in Sanskrit, Atma can be used generically to mean oneself, or according to context, it can mean myself, yourself. It can be in any first person, second person, third person. Myself, yourself, himself, itself, herself, like that. Atma here means oneself. So the implication of Ēkāṇma is that we ourselves are the one thing that actually exists. That's the implication. That Bhagavan states very clearly in the final verse. He actually uses the word ēkāṇma or Atma only in the final verse. In the other 4 verses, he doesn't use the Sanskrit word Atma. He uses the equivalent Tamil term, which is taṇ, which again is often used generically to mean oneself, but it can also refer to any of the 3 persons. So ṇāda, it means I myself. Nitān means you yourself. Avantan, he himself. Adutan, it itself. So that's it's used. It can refer to any three persons, but in a philosophical context like this, it's referring to ourselves, to me, myself, or we ourselves. So how I translated the title is 5 verses on oneself for one, because that's the idea. We ourselves are the one thing. As I say, Bhagavan composed 5 verses. Murugan then composed a concluding verse. And then Bhagavan changed the 5 verses, changed all the verses. He linked them together as one verse in what is called Kalivemba. Kalivemba is a string of vembas, but they're linked together because the last line of a vemba is just 3 or 2.5 feet. So you can link it to the next verse by adding another 1.5 feet. Bhagavan did this with all the works he composed in Vemba. He did it with Uludunapadu. He did it with his Tamil translation of Bhagavad Gita Saram, Atma-vichara Prakanam, and Devikalotram. The only work Bhagavan composed in Tamil that he didn't, in Vemba, which he didn't make into a Kali Vemba, was Ēkāṇma Pañcakam, the last of the 5 hymns. The reason he didn't compose it was because it was customary in the ashram, because Bhagavan had first composed Ēkāṇma Pañcakam in Sanskrit. They used to sing one verse of Sanskrit, then verse of Tamil, verse of Sanskrit, verse of Tamil. So there was no need to link it together. The other works he linked together to make it easy for people to recite, because then you can easily remember the continuity, which is the next verse that comes. So Bhagavan made Ēkāṇma Pañcakam into a Kali Vemba. When he made it into Kali Vemba, it then becomes one verse, so it's no longer appropriate to call it Pañcakam, which means 5 verses. So there are 2 alternative titles for the Kali Vemba version. Generally, it's called Ēkāṇma, which means knowledge or distinguishing or discernment of oneself for one, or Ēkāṇma, which means truth of oneself for one. When Bhagavan composed the Kali Vemba version, then Murugan wrote this first verse, the Payaram, which Bhagavan then linked to the other verses, so all 7 of them were linked together into one Kali Vemba. What Murugan says in this introductory verse, Payaram, is Indu Arulal Munnalita Ēkāṇma Pañcakate Ānda Ramana Asane Akinan Mindum Mei Anba Oduku Uduviyaha Vivakam Ennum Nal Kalivemba Va maṟandu. What that means is, as an aid for true devotees to recite Ēkāṇma Pañcakam, which he had previously given by his grace, Lord Ramana Guru again lovingly composed it here as a fine Kali Vemba called Ēkāṇma. And as I say, an alternative version of this verse gives the title as Ēkāṇma, which I explain in the note there. The word that I translated here as Lord is ānda, which is a word that has a very deep and rich meaning in Tamil. It is ānda is an adjectival participle of a verb āl, which is a verb Bhagavan uses very, very frequently in the 5 hymns to Arunachala. Āl means to rule. It also means to take on, like someone a rich man who takes on a young poet or artist as a protege. That is called, if you take responsibility for someone, it also means caring for. As a noun, al means to be a servant or a slave, but not a servant or a slave unwillingly, but you willingly do service, and the person for whom you do service takes full responsibility for you. So it's a two-way relationship. So one of the words in Tamil for God is āndavam, which means he who rules, or he who takes full responsibility for us. So it shows a very loving relationship between master and servant, but in a devotional context. God is the master, we are the servant. So he takes we surrender ourselves to him, and he takes responsibility for us. So it's, in a sense, you can say, al is the opposite, is the other side of surrender. To the extent that we surrender ourselves to God, to that extent he takes responsibility for us. But even if we don't take surrender to him, he's still taking responsibility for us, but we are not yielding ourselves to the care he is taking for us. So it's a word with a very deep and rich meaning in Tamil. So Murugan refers to Bhagavan as Ānda Ramana Asane. Asane means Acharya, which means the same as Guru. Ānda, as I say, I've translated as Lord, but it has a much deeper and richer meaning. The first verse that Bhagavan composed is, in it he says, taṉṇai maṛandu, that means forgetting oneself, taṉuvē tāṉā eṇṇi, which means thinking or considering oneself, thinking that a body alone is oneself. Yeṇṇil piṟavi eḍuttu, that means taking innumerable births. Iṛudi taṉṇai uṇarndu, finally knowing oneself. Ādal, being oneself. Ulaha sañcāra kaṉaviṉ, viṛittalē kān, is waking up from a dream of wandering around the world. Kān means sea. That's just a concluding word. In the first 1.5 lines, Bhagavan talks about the error we make. First, in the order in which he gives it, forgetting ourselves, considering ourselves to be a body, and thereby taking innumerable births. This is the problem. This is the problem we're all facing. Though he talks about two things, taṉṇai maṛandu, that's forgetting oneself, and taṉuvē tāṇā eṇṇi, thinking a body to be oneself, he doesn't mean that we first forget ourselves and then we take our body to be ourselves, because it occurs simultaneously. What forgetting ourselves means, we never actually forget ourselves. We always know I am. But so we don't forget that we are. What we forget is what we are. If we were aware of what we actually are, we couldn't mistake ourselves to be anything else. We couldn't mistake ourselves to be a body. But what is it that has forgotten ourselves? It is not, our real nature never forgets itself. It is only as ego that we forget ourselves. And the very nature of ego is to be always aware of itself as a body. So this forgetting ourselves and taking a body to be ourselves are actually just two sides of the same coin. We can't say that either is the cause or the effect of the other. Neither can occur without the other. We couldn't mistake ourselves to be a body if we were aware of ourselves as we actually are. So it's only because we've forgotten ourselves that we're able to take ourselves to be a body. But if we didn't take ourselves to be a body, we wouldn't have forgotten what we actually are. Because we, as I say, we never actually forget what we actually are, what we are. We are always aware of ourselves as I am. The problem now, instead of being aware of ourselves just as I am, we're aware of ourselves as I am this body, I am this person. So that wrong knowledge, that awareness of, that false awareness of ourselves as something other than what we actually are, is itself forgetting what we actually are. The two are inseparable. When we forget what we actually are and take a body to be ourself, we are thereby born. But the story doesn't end there. We know we're born and we live for some years and we die. But the story doesn't end there. Because the basic self-forgetfulness, self-ignorance is there, we take one birth after another. But all these births, according to Bhagavan, our whole life is nothing but a dream. So that's why he says, but when we finally know what we actually are, and therefore be as we actually are, that is like waking up from a dream of wandering all over the world. When in a dream, we see, if we wander all over the world in our dream, we'll see so many wonderful things, beautiful cities, great mountains and deserts. So we see all sorts of things in the dream, but none of those things that we see in the dream exist independent of our perception of them. So what is real in the dream is only ourself. Everything else is just a mental fabrication. Not only all the other things we see, even the person we take ourselves to be in a dream is itself a mental fabrication. We are not actually that person. In the dream we take ourselves to be a body. And that body, when going through a jungle, we may be attacked by a tiger and injured, but when we wake up, it's a different body. It's not, that body is a mental fabrication. So the person we seem to be in a dream is as unreal as all the other things we see in a dream. That is the very nature of dreaming. We project many phenomena, and we see ourselves as one of those phenomena, as a body in the dream. And so long as we are not aware of ourselves as we actually are, the dreams will continue dreaming one dream after another. The reason for that is, when we limit ourselves as a body, we separate ourselves seemingly. Obviously we never cease to be what we actually are, but when we are aware of ourselves as a body, we seem to be something other than what we actually are. What we actually are, according to Bhagavan, is infinite happiness. But when we limit ourselves as a body, we then become a finite creature. We can no longer experience infinite happiness. We experience a mixture of pleasure and pain. So as ego, we are constantly dissatisfied. And it's our dissatisfaction that makes us constantly seek for happiness outside ourselves. And because of that desire because we are under the illusion that we get happiness from things outside ourselves. If we desire something, if we're hungry, and we're given food, we feel relief from the hunger. That relief makes us feel happy. Like that with all desires. Desires are born of dissatisfaction. When a desire is satisfied, we experience happiness. It seems to us that I'm experiencing happiness because this is very tasty food, or I'm experiencing happiness because I've got a lot of money in my bank account. I want to have money. I want to earn a lot of money and to be a rich man. If I succeed, then I'll be happy. But then I'm not satisfied because I've only got a few million. The man round at the other end of the street, he's got hundreds of millions. So I want more, and I want more, and I want more. We are never satisfied. Desire, Bhagavan said, desire is a bottomless pit. It can never be filled. You can never satisfy desire. But because we as ego, we can never be satisfied because we are separated from our real nature, which is infinite happiness. So we're always seeking happiness. And because we associate happiness with when our desires are fulfilled, we're happy, we think by fulfilling our desires more and more we'll be happy. But the more desires we have, the more dissatisfied we are. So it's this dissatisfaction, which is the very nature of ego, which prompts us to dream one dream after another. So it's an endless cycle, so long as we continue to mistake ourselves to be a body. And when this one body dies, then we dream another body. So how to put an end to this endless cycle of endless births and deaths, which are, according to Barren, nothing but one dream after another. The key to putting an end to it all, Bhagavan says, taṉṇai uṇarndu. I mean, knowing oneself, being aware of ourselves. That implies being aware of ourselves as we actually are. When we're aware of ourselves as we actually are, we no longer mistake ourselves to be a body. And we are perfectly happy because what we actually are is infinite happiness. So simply by knowing what we actually are, we will experience the infinite happiness that we have all this time been seeking, which we've never actually lost because it's always ourself. It's nothing other than ourself. But because of we've limited ourselves as this body, happiness seems to be something other than ourselves, and it's something we're seeking, when actually it's just ourselves. So the key to putting an end to all this is to know ourselves, taṉṇai uṇarndu. And when we know ourselves, we are no longer a body, we're no longer a person. So that's why Bhagavan says, ādal, being oneself. In Upadesha he says, tāṉai viṛittalē, taṉṇai ādal, in verse 26. Tāṉai viṛittalē, taṉṇai ādal. Being oneself itself is knowing oneself. That is, when we know what we actually are, we are what we actually are. When we don't know what we actually are, we mistake ourselves to be something else. So, knowing what we actually are is the key to being what we actually are. Of course, we are never not what we actually are, but we are not aware of ourselves as such. So simply by being aware of ourselves as we actually are, we remain as we actually are. That Bhagavan compares to waking up from a dream. When we wake up from a dream, we know all that we experienced in the dream. None of that ever actually happened. It was all a mental fabrication. The only thing in the dream that existed was ourself. So the implication here is, when we wake up from this dream of all of these endless births, one dream after another, when we wake up, we will find we alone exist. That is why Bhagavan wrote this in connection with the title Ēkāṇma Pañcakam. That is Ēkāṇma, as I say, it means oneself, the one, meaning the only one. We ourselves alone actually exist. So all this that we see, the one substance of all this is only ourself. We are nothing but pure awareness. But when we rise as ego, we seem to we project all these phenomena, which according to Bhagavan are just mental phenomena. They have no, to us these seem to be physical phenomena. This chair seems to be physical, this wall seems to be physical, the picture seems to be physical, everything seems to be physical, but according to Bhagavan, in a dream also everything seems to be physical, but according to Bhagavan it's all mental. So even physical phenomena are just mental phenomena. And the substance of mental phenomena is just awareness. It's just a mental, it's all a mental fabrication. So the one thing that is actually real is only ourself. Nothing else is actually real. And Bhagavan, in every verse, as I say, Bhagavan is in one way or another emphasizing this fact that we alone are real. And one more thing. As I say, when Bhagavan linked all these verses together as a Kali Vemba, sometimes the words he added are very significant. Sometimes they're not so significant. In this case, he linked this verse to the introductory verse. So he added the words Oruvan Munbaha, which means Oruvan means someone or anyone. Munbaha means formerly, previously. And he changed the final word Kān, which is an imperative meaning see, to Kānga, which is an optative meaning may you see. So with this Kali Vemba extension, this verse means, after formally forgetting oneself, considering a body to be oneself, and taking innumerable births, finally knowing oneself and being oneself is like waking up from a dream of wandering around the world. May you see. May you see implies here, may you see what you actually are. And then you'll see the truth of this verse.
This is a difficult question, which I don't really sort of understand myself, so bear with me when I try to make it intelligible. When Bhagavan talks about waking up after wandering about in the world, does he also include in that previous lives where one has been popping up in different parts of the world?
Well,
no, hang on, just to go on a bit from that. It's in the invocation to the supplement to the 40 verses, Bhagavan talks about all these worlds, in which all these worlds in which you are fixed, which kind of implies an infinity of other worlds in which we might be reincarnated and so forth. So not only is the waking up confined to waking up in this world, but in all the other worlds that we've sort of been in until we've woken up. So the dream only ends when we've woken up from all these myriads of different places that we've been in. Yes. Something like that.
Yes.
Something like that.
Well, Bhagavan says in the third verse, he answers this question. When the body is actually within oneself, anyone who thinks that oneself is within the body is like someone who thinks that the cloth of the screen, which is the support for the cinema picture, exists within that picture. That is all. We are not born in any world. The world is born in us. In a dream, we're not suddenly born in some other world. Every dream is a different world, but it's all within us. So there are.
But nevertheless, there's an infinity of these worlds that we project for ourselves.
We create for ourselves, yes. Regarding your first question, whether he says in this verse, ēṇṇil piṟavi eḍuttu, that means taking innumerable births. The implication is every birth is a dream. But since he talks about waking up from a dream, all these dreams are within a bigger dream. That is, we have a dream of having, like now, this is a dream. When we go to bed at night, we have other dreams. So we have dreams within dreams within dreams. All is within one big dream, When we wake up from that big dream, which is the sleep, that is what Bhagavan is talking here. When we know ourselves, we'll wake up from all dreams.
Yes.
It's the ending of all dreams.
Yes. So, that's
yeah. But I mean, people often think of this idea of reincarnation or transmigration, as it's sometimes called. People think that there's a body there, and that the soul goes and is born in the body, but according to Bhagavan, it's all a dream. So the body is itself part of the dream, it's part of the projection. So there is no world out there. We don't go one life in one world, one life in another world, as if the worlds exist independent of us. Any world that we find ourselves in is our own mental fabrication and exists only in us.
And is God, is Bhagavan, that in which all these worlds are fixed, the prime cause, is he sort of it orchestrating these worlds in which we dream up?
Bhagavan talked at different levels to different people. Sometimes Bhagavan talked as if God created the world. For example, if someone was very worried about the condition of the world and wanted to reform the world, or wanted to solve the problems of the world, Bhagavan used to say, he who has created the world knows how to look after it. Leave it to him, surrender to him. There he's talking as if God created the world. But that is a teaching he gave to people at a certain level. But at a deeper level, the teaching he gave is, God is not the first cause. First cause is ego. If ego comes into existence, everything comes into existence. If ego doesn't exist, everything doesn't exist. Ego itself is everything. He says in verse 26 of Uṇarndu. So according to Bhagavan, the first cause is our rising as ego. Even God comes into existence only, God as a separate entity, that is, comes into existence only when we rise as ego. What God actually is our own real nature. But when we rise as ego, we become a small person. So this small person God is something other than this small person that we seem to be. So this separation between ourself and God is created by our rising as ego. If we know, in that verse 26 I was referring to, was it verse 26? So that is in Upadesundaya, the verse before verse 26, verse 25, he says, knowing oneself without adjuncts is itself knowing God, because God exists as oneself. So now it seems, because I've limited myself as this person, obviously Michael isn't God. So God seems to be someone other than Michael. If I am Michael, then God is separate from me. But if I know what I actually am, God is nothing other than that. God is our own real nature. The separation is created, but the appearance of separation is created by our rising as ego.
The realization that we are God all the time is what we wake up to when we eventually wake up.
Yes. We can say it in those terms. Yes. But actually, the simpler way of saying it, when we wake up, we find we alone exist. That's the meaning of this title, Ēkāṇma Pañcakam. Oneself alone exists. So God is not other than ourself. That's why he says in this verse, God shines as oneself. God is nothing other than ourself. And conversely, obviously, we can say we are nothing other than God. Because God is the infinite whole, we cannot be anything other than that. But the problem lies not with God, the problem lies with us. So if we know ourselves, then that illusory separation is dissolved. That's what is sometimes, in certain religion, they talk about union with God. Bhagavan said, first you've got to have separation before you can have union. See whether you're separated. If you investigate yourself, you'll find you were never separated. So there's no need for any union.
For so long as we are separate, we need all the sort of dualistic teachings that you get in religions like Christianity. Buddhism.
Yes, but Bhagavan asked, why to accept that you're separated in the first place? Why to first impose limitations on yourself and find ways to get rid of the limitations? No, all you need to do is to turn within and see what you actually are, then you'll find there never were any limitations. So obviously religions have their place at a certain level. Religions can help people's spiritual development. Doesn't always work like that. Sometimes, I mean, a lot of the so-called religious people, religion is just another identity. That's what I was saying to you one day. The difference between religion on one hand and spirituality on the other hand. Most religions are based on two things. Firstly, religions expect you to believe unquestioningly. And secondly, it's an identity. I am a Christian, I am a Muslim, I am a Hindu. Whereas spirituality is quite the opposite. Spirituality asks us, particularly as spirituality as taught by Bhagavan, it asks us not to believe anything that we do not know, to question everything, including our own seeming existence as a person. So all our beliefs Bhagavan challenges. So we have to question all our beliefs and our identity. So in that sense, religion and spirituality are two extremes, but there's a whole range in between. A lot of religious people are to a greater or lesser extent spiritual. A lot of spiritual people are to a greater or lesser extent religious. But the extreme of religion on one hand, a lot of religious people are not at all spiritual. They just blindly believe something and it's an identity for them.
So to the extent that you're merely religious, that's part of the business of wandering about in the world.
Yeah, exactly. Once there was a person called David Makeba. He was a Scotsman, but he lived all his life in India. He was born in Bombay. From young age, he was interested in spiritual matters. He started off as a theosophist, then he was a follower of J. Krishnamurti, then he became a Sufi. So he dabbled in everything. At one time when he came, a friend of mine told me that once when he was in Bhagavan's presence, one tall Muslim with a beard came in and bowed before Bhagavan and offered some dates. And Bhagavan looked around at everyone and said, "Do you know don't you recognize this? This is our Makeba." Because he had become, at that time he was a Sufi. After that, he went on a holiday to Kashmir. And he came back from Kashmir, he was dressed as a Brahmin, with the Pañcakam dhoti and a sacred thread and everything. And he prostrated before Bhagavan, and he said, "Bhagavan, I've become a Hindu." Bhagavan looked at him and said, "Who has become what?"
He's the man who, the Makeba house.
Makeba, yes. I never knew him because he married a Parsi lady called Rhoda. Yeah. And I knew Rhoda Makeba well, but I think by the time I was in Tirunelveli, he probably passed away, but he'd left long before, because after Bhagavan, he went and he was a follower of some guru in Kerala who was into Tantra or something.
Anyway, that's enough.
Yeah, but I mean, that's incident. But the point of the story is, true spirituality is not about being a Christian or Hindu or Muslim or anything. True spirituality is questioning our identity. Am I what I seem to be? The truth is, if we're not a person, then we're not Christian, we're not Hindu, we're not Muslim, we're not English, we're not Indian, we're not American, we are just as we are. So all these identifications, they are the obstacle to true spirituality. So the more we are ready to question and to let go of this identification, the closer we are to true spirituality.
So I completely understand this feeling of the more you question yourself, the more you're curious, the more you understand yourself. That was one part. The other thing I want to talk about is dreams.
Yes.
So, let me try to put this correctly. So, on a daily basis, you remember your dreams, sometimes you don't remember your actual, I'm talking about actual sleeping dreams. Sometimes you remember them, sometimes you don't. When you do remember your dreams, I don't feel that I am a person in my dream. I literally feel like a point of consciousness. I actually don't, everything else is physical around me, whether, let's say, like you said, a lion is coming and it's coming to, there's a hunt and I'm in a forest, so I can see the forest, I can see the lion, but when I recollect my dream, I don't see myself ever as a body. I can't see that. I know I'm in my dream and I can visualize everything around me, but I myself am not a body. While at some point you said that you are a body also in your dreams. But this is something I have understood for myself over time, sometimes recollecting my dreams, like, what am I in my dream? Like, am I actually this physical skin, hands, legs, body, all put together, or what? And the more I recollect, the more I understand, is I'm never a body. I am always just a point of consciousness, just witnessing everything.
Okay, you say you're a point of consciousness. That point of consciousness is located there's a seeming world there. That point of consciousness is seemingly located somewhere in the world, isn't it? If we perceive a world, we don't perceive a world from outside. We perceive from a certain point in the world. We must have a perspective. That point where we perceive ourselves as in a world, because we limited ourselves to a body. When we recollect a dream, our memory of our body in dream may not be so much uppermost in our mind, but most of the day, though the body is always there, we're always aware of ourselves as a body, but we're not actually attending to the body most of the time. When we have aches and pains, or we're tired, we may become aware of the body. But much of the time, if we're doing mental work, for example, okay, if you're typing, for example, you're not really aware of your fingers typing. You're just aware of the thought process of what you're going to type next. So the awareness of ourselves as a body is the basis for this. That doesn't mean we're constantly, our attention constantly focused on the body. Usually our awareness, we are attending to things other than ourselves. So they are the focus of but the body is there in the background. So when we remember a dream, we may not remember our body very clearly, but we were at the time of a dream. If a lion came chasing us, we run away. If we're not a body, why would we run away? If we're just a point of consciousness. We experience in a dream, we experience desire, we experience fear, we experience everything. Because we take ourselves to be a person in that dream.
Yeah. And I do understand that we are waking up from a dream also.
Yeah, yeah.
And the more you wake up from the dream, is more you understand. The ego gets killed and you understand.
Yeah, except but it's not a, either we're dreaming or we're not dreaming. Yeah, it's not a gradual process of waking. What is gradual is our willingness to let go of our attachment to whatever dream we're in. The more we are willing to give up our desires and attachments, the closer we are to waking up, the final waking up. Yeah.
been noticing recently the Dalai Lama has been making various comments, and he seems to be like encouraging people to be kind to one another and good to one another. And it seems to me these teachings, which are of course really inspiring, which we're all following, are extremely high teachings. And there are a lot of people who, I'm not talking about anyone in this room necessarily, but so-called spiritual people who treat one another very shabbily and don't seem to have those basic qualities of whatever. So does it not make sense for people to try to develop those before?
Yes, well, the stronger our identification with a particular person, if I'm very strongly identified with Michael, my primary concern will be about Michael. We see very egotistical people who really don't care about anyone else. They only care about themselves. That is because of a very strong identification. But the more we are truly spiritual, the more we question our identity, the more we surrender ourselves, the less strongly we will feel the separation between ourselves and others. So if we see another person suffering, we will feel that suffering as if it's our own suffering. So compassion comes naturally to the extent that ego is reduced, is subside. To that extent we will be naturally compassionate. As you say, there are some so-called spiritual people who really don't care about others. Their spirituality is a sham. True spirituality, I mean, compassion is an unavoidable byproduct of egolessness. So to the extent we free ourselves from ego, from the strength of identification with this body, to that extent we will naturally feel compassion for others.
I'm also thinking of certain people that I know who've been brought up in this country as Christians and who are extremely caring of other people and go out of their way to help other people. But they say to me, I can't understand why you spend all this time meditating. Surely the truth is in action if you're not helping people. They can't take that other step.
Yeah. It's people are at different levels of spiritual development. It is good to do good in the world, but whatever good we do is limited to the extent that we ourselves are good. There are people who are very kind, but only to a certain group of people. I mean, there are people who, they go out to, for example, I'm just saying, I'm not picking on Christianity, just as an example. Someone who is Christian, who will be so kind and caring to someone who belongs to their particular sect of Christianity, but they despise anyone who belongs to any other religion or even any other sect of Christianity. So I mean, there are so many different levels of spiritual development, and for some people it's appropriate just to be doing good because they haven't yet got that purity of mind to recognize that the problems of the world are all rooted in ourselves. The problems are not ultimately the root cause of all the problems we see in the world is ourselves. But very few are ready to come to that point, because until you accept that this whole world is a dream, it's very difficult to accept that all the evil you see in this world is your own creation.
Is that purity of mind, or does it mean that you've suffered enough to be able?
Along with suffering enough comes purity of mind. That purity of mind, what are the impurities in the mind? Desires and attachments and fears and so on. The more we suffer, the more once someone asked Bhagavan, though you say happiness lies within and that this world is just a dream, why is my mind still is going after this world? Bhagavan said, you haven't had enough of it yet. So it's only when we become tired of projecting one dream after another that tiredness comes with purity of mind when we recognize, but so long as your mind is full of desires, you don't see desires as the problem. The problem isn't my desire to be rich. My problem is that I'm not rich. It's the view of a person with a lot of desire. So their focus is only on the wealth, and when they get the wealth, they want more of it, and they want more of it. But the problem is not the lack of wealth. The problem is the desire for wealth. How much wealth do we actually need? Our needs are comparatively little, but our wants are far, far greater than our needs. So the problem is our desire, it's not the lack of what we are desiring that is our problem, it's the fact that we have desire. And when we get what we desire, then some other desire will pop up.
I'd like to ask you, what is the word for ego in Sanskrit? What are you translating as ego? The word in Sanskrit?
It's sometimes used ahankara, which is a Sanskrit word. More frequently he used the term ahande, which is a Tamil form of ahanta, which means I-ness.
What is the implication of ahanta or ahankara? I mean, what would it mean if you pass it?
You're asking about the Sanskrit word or the
Sanskrit word, what is the word in terms of...
aham is I. Ahanta, it means net, is equivalent to ness. So literal translation of ahanta is I-ness. But it means not what we actually are, but the limited I, the awareness I am this body.
I'm the doer.
Yeah.
I'm the doer.
Yeah, I am doer comes out of, if we identify ourselves with the body, then the actions of body, speech and mind we experience as I am doing. So doership is the very nature of ego.
Does acharya simply mean teacher or great teacher?
It depends on the context in which it is used. Acharya generally, yes, generally it means a spirit. I mean, it's often used in a spiritual context to mean like Shankaracharya. It's more or less equivalent of guru in this sort of context. But acharya can mean any teacher. I mean, even in a more mundane sense, sometimes the term acharya is used. Shankaracharya is, yeah. In that context, it means guru. It means a spiritual guru. But even the term guru is used if you're learning music. Your teacher is either your guru or your acharya. So I mean, it depends on the context in which it's used. But when Bhagavan or Shankara is referred to as guru, it means the very highest.
So the more you get to know yourself and the deeper you go into yourself, the more you feel connected with what I call the universe. I don't like giving it a name of even the word God. I just want to say the universe. Now, I hope I don't offend anyone in this room, but the moment you have a guru, or let's say you believe in a particular religion, and you believe in Jesus or Muhammad or Buddha, whatever, don't you feel that you are removing yourself, that one step, by giving yourself up to, let's say, a guru, like we are in this room, or to a religious leader? My own experience has taught me that the more the crutches that you drop of any kind, the closer you come to yourself. And as you come closer to yourself, you come closer to what we call the universe. And it becomes like a magical dance between the universe and you. So I am unable to bow my head down to any guru. I don't believe in any religion. And in my life, this stems from a particular incident that's happened in my life on December 19th, 2015, in full waking hours at 4 p.m. in the evening, and which lasted for 1 hour, 48 minutes. And what you were talking about, even dreams, that 1 hour, 48 minutes for me was more real than my entire life put together. So actually for me now, my everyday living is a dream in real time. So I love learning new things, and that's why I'm here today. I'm not a regular here. But I cannot give myself up to any guru, teacher, whether it be the biggest religious leaders. I cannot do that because I feel I'm lying to myself now by doing that. And that's why I'll come in full respect. I will stand up, but I might not go down on my knees and put my head down, because I've already put my head down to something that's so powerful, and it's not a someone, it's a something. Okay. We each have to find what is appropriate for us. The real guru, like Bhagavan, for example, he doesn't come for us to worship him. He comes to tell us that what is real is ourself. In order to find what is real, we have to turn within. An example to illustrate this, there was a devotee called Janaki Mata. She was she even became a guru. She had her own following. She was considered as a very spiritual person and everything. She worshipped Bhagavan as God, Guru, everything. Once when she came to Bhagavan, Bhagavan had been to the Gosala, the cow shed, to see the cows, and he was walking back, and there were not many people around. So she thought this is a very good opportunity. So she went up to him, bowed down, caught his feet, and put her head on his feet. Bhagavan looked down at her with a smile and said, "What are you doing?" And she said, "I'm holding the feet of my guru." And Bhagavan said, "These are not the feet of your guru. This body is perishable. If these are the feet, so this body is perishable, so these feet are perishable. If these are the feet of your guru, they will pass away. That is not the real feet of a guru. The real feet of a guru is what is shining in you as eye. Hold those feet. They alone will save you." So the real guru, though it is natural for for most of us, we feel great love for Bhagavan because of what he's taught us. But we are missing the point of what he's taught us if we cling only to his form and don't follow what he said. There's one paragraph in ṉāda, Who Am I?, in which he says, God and Guru are not different. Just like the prey that is caught in the jaws of a tiger cannot escape, those who are caught in the glance of Guru's grace
will certainly be saved and never forsaken. However, it is necessary to follow without fail the path shown by Guru. So merely worshipping Bhagavan as God, that may be appropriate for certain people at a certain level of spiritual development. But if we want to, people who worship Bhagavan, they're taking him to be God. Guru is not to be worshipped. God is to be worshipped. Guru is to be followed. The true way of worshipping Guru is to follow what he says. What he says is, turn within, find yourself. So, as I say, people are at different levels. What is appropriate for one person is not appropriate for another person. The majority of so-called devotees of Bhagavan are not actually following his teachings, or not to a very great extent. Primarily, for them, Bhagavan is a god. If they have difficulties, they pray to Bhagavan for removal of their difficulties. That's appropriate for them at their level of spiritual development. For such people, Bhagavan is a Hindu god. But Bhagavan is not a Hindu. Bhagavan is beyond all religion, because he's the ultimate reality. What you are referring to as the universe, I think you're not meaning this manifest physical. What you mean is the substratum, what underlies all this. What underlies all this is pure awareness. That is what is God. That is what is Guru. That is what you really are.
I feel that.
Yeah. But as far as bowing down, there's no harm in bowing down, because what is bowing down is this body. This body is certainly far inferior to what was shining in that body. So bowing down it can be an aid to subsiding the ego. But ultimately what has to bow down is not the body. We can bow down, we can make a great show of bowing down, being a great devotee. But what really needs to bow down is ego.
I agree. As well as there's a big difference between knowledge and knowing. When a guru can give you some kind of knowledge, which is wonderful, beautiful, but until you know that for yourself, it's only words from a guru or in a textbook. But if you don't know it, you'll always keep on searching for it.
Yes. Well, these terms don't have fixed meanings, but I understand the sense in which you're using them. It is not merely learning. Mere book learning is not true knowledge or true knowing. We have to actually be aware of ourselves as we actually are. Merely learning, I am Brahman, I am not this body, that is just the that's the starting point. But you have to, once you're told you are not this body, you are Brahman, then it's up to you to find out what you actually are. If I am Brahman, then what am I? Yes.
Greed can be aligned to goodness gracious.
Sorry, I didn't catch what you said.
Greed
Yes.
can be aligned to the search for expansion, can't it?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
it's. I mean, you say people are greedy, but basically, I think what is happening there is that they are looking for expansion. What they haven't understood is that if it's got a border, it's not going to be expansion. And they are really looking for infinity. So it's a perverse way of looking for God.
We find it infinity not by expanding. However much we expand, however much we accumulate, it's still finite.
Yes, yes, because it's got a border.
Yes, in order to experience infinity, we have to drop all limitations.
Well, it's no border. Yes. Bingo, infinity.
Exactly, yes. But how to drop all borders?
Well, that's the question.
The root of all borders is ego, because as ego, we're always aware of ourselves as I am this body. So that is not what we actually are. The way to get rid of this border, this limitation, is to see what we actually are. That means we have to turn our attention within, we have to investigate ourselves, and thereby experience what we actually are. When we experience what we actually are, we will find we never were limited.
You know, I think most of us know what we are in mind.
Yes, but that's not real knowing, as she said.
Absolutely. It is experiencing what we are. That's the difference.
Yeah, actually being aware of ourselves as we actually are.
So it's not as easy as that, mate. That's for sure. So
it is easy. According to Bhagavan, there's nothing easier than this. But why it seems difficult? Because we're not yet ready to let go. If we were willing to let go of our limitations, being infinite is easy. But so long as we're clinging to the limitations, we cannot experience infinity.
right, so basically what we've got to do is stop chasing things and look for nothing.
Yes. But as Bhagavan said, bhakti is the mother of jnana. That means love is the mother of true knowledge. It's all a matter of willingness. We need to be, why we're chasing things outside, because we have desire to, we have that desire for happiness. We think happiness we're going to get if I have more money or more wealth or more this or more that, or more knowledge or more friends or more likes on Facebook or whatever. We always want to accumulate more and more, thinking that's going to satisfy us. But we can, however much we achieve, we can never be satisfied. Because whatever we achieve is finite. So by adding more finite things, you're getting no closer to infinity. In order to experience infinity, you need to be willing to let go of everything. When you let go of everything, what remains is infinity, which is what you always actually were.
And indeed, that's basically what we're looking for. We're looking for happiness. We're looking for where we are natural, infinite. And we made a little mistake there because we think that, that nice new car is going to make us happy. But it doesn't. So basically, even that is a step towards. Now I know that you're going to say, drop everything, but even that is a step towards trying to find the absolute.
Every effort, every action done by any living being is driven by one thing, that is the desire for happiness. But the problem is we are looking for happiness in the wrong way. Only when we've experienced all the cars, all the wealth, all the knowledge, only when we've gone through all these things and recognized the emptiness of all these things. But none of these things are going to satisfy us. Only when we recognize this will we become willing to let go of everything. And when we let go of everything, what remains is what we always actually were.
Yes. What we are.
What we are, yes.
That's nothing. No thing.
Everything.
Everything.
The only thing.
No thing. Right.
But we can't let go of it. We can't let go of something that is non-existent.
You get sick of it. You don't
So
let go.
it's that basically, if you're saying we are happiness, if we really are sincere in believing what Bhagavan has told us, that we are happiness, when we believe that we are unhappy, and then we reach out for something external to make us happy, really it's not about letting go of that, it's about correcting that error. So in a sense, you can't really, I'm struggling to see how you could let go of something that is actually erroneous in its...
Yes. But all language has its limitations. Now we are clinging to things. I'm clinging to this person, Michael, because I am Michael. And because I am Michael, I need to have food, I need shelter and everything. And in order to, I can get food and shelter for today, but what about tomorrow? What about the next day? So I need security, so I need money, so I need this, and I need friends, and I need this. And we cling to so many things, thinking that these are going to make us happy. That's why it is said we have to let go. It's the opposite of clinging. Clinging is the very nature of ego. So surrender is going against the very nature of ego. But only when we understand that all our clinging, all our grasping is a recipe for misery, then only we will be willing to stop grasping. If you don't want to say letting go, stop grasping. It amounts to the same thing.
Well, get sick of it.
Yeah. As Bhagavan said, when someone asks, Bhagavan, why my mind still goes after this world when you say there's no happiness in this world, Bhagavan said, because you haven't had enough of it. You're not yet sick enough of it. So the whole spiritual path is learning to be sick of all this. Learning the emptiness of all these things. But
So basically, actually, being troubled, being suffering is not a bad thing, really.
well, yes, in a sense, yes. But why we suffer only because we are clinging. If we were ready to let go of everything, if we didn't have likes and dislikes, nothing could make us suffer. But we have likes and dislikes. I want this, I don't want that. This will make me happy, that will make me unhappy. So we need to, that will make us suffer, but we need to recognize what is the cause of our suffering.
You know, I remember reading about a young chap who's been there, he's had it all, he left it, and then he was given a position again, and he says, you know, I've been there, I've had it, and there's nothing there.
Yes.
And he realized that it's not that he's chasing.
Yes.
But I guess he hasn't found infinity yet.
Yes. Regarding what you were saying about letting go, I was going to say one more thing on that. I thought you were going to ask something slightly different. What I was going to say is, the only way to let go of everything that is unreal, is to hold what is real. What is real is ourself. So it's only by holding ourself that we can let go of everything else. But in order to hold ourself, we have to be willing to let go of everything else. That is the problem. That's why everyone says, oh, this self-investigation, Atma-vichara is so difficult. Why it's difficult? We make it difficult for ourselves because we're not willing to let go.
Because why I was asking that question is because linked to what you were saying about desires, it's, yes, related to the willingness of letting go, but sometimes, I can't describe it, but you've answered it, yeah, that's what it is. Yeah. The unreal has no being, and the real never ceases to be. Yeah. Therefore, when we attend to the unreal and we give it so much importance in terms of letting it go, and it kind of actually energizes it. So when we're in our practice, when we are being overcome by the unreal, I was asking with regards to practicing when things sort of overtake you, what methods are beneficial. And for me personally, I found, that's what I was trying to ascertain what your opinion was on it. I found that realizing, or kind of even acknowledging, that actually we are happiness, and this sense of rising or desiring is foreign. It's not natural to us. And so the fact it's foreign, the fact it's transient, means it has no being. So it immediately loses its power when you view it in that way. That's what I was trying to get to.
But to recognize that, we can recognize it at different levels. We can recognize it just conceptually, but recognition has to be much, much deeper than that. To the extent that we really see the very nature of rising is misery, is dissatisfaction. We cannot rise without being dissatisfied. It's dissatisfaction and rising. Dissatisfaction is the very nature of rising. So if we allow ourselves to rise, if we allow ourselves to attend to anything, we are creating dissatisfaction for ourselves. And as you say, unreal things seem real only because we attend to them. Nothing has any reality except the reality we give it. And we give things reality by attending to them. Just as an example, to illustrate this, supposing you have a phobia of snakes. The more you think about snakes, the more that phobia will increase. If you want to get rid of that phobia, you need to stop thinking about snakes, stop considering snakes to be fearful. You need to wean your mind away from that. So all things seem real to the extent that we attend to them. So to the extent that we can withdraw our attention from other things and hold on to ourselves, to that extent we will be able to see through the unreality of other things. We see through the unreality of other things by seeing what we ourselves actually are. So the more we practice what Bhagavan taught us, this self-investigation and self-surrender, the easier it will become for us to let go, because the clearer it will become to us that what is actually real is only ourself. And everything else is just an appearance, but seems to be real only because we attend to it.
So, Michael, what are we? We're nothing. No.
Everything else is nothing. You are the only thing. You cannot be nothing. There is something. But what is that something? That is you.
Ultimately, we are formless.
Yes. We are not any phenomenon. We are not any phenomenon. But we are but yes.
We can form us, but that would be a phenomenon.
Well, yeah. in a sense, yes. But insofar as formlessness is a concept, We are not formless, yes. But what that concept is pointing at, we are that. So but words have their limitations. No words can capture it. That's why Bhagavan said the real teaching is not the teaching in words, but the teaching in silence. The words are necessary as pointers, but the real teaching is the silence. And where can we find that silence? Only within ourselves. Because if we attend to anything other than ourselves, there's a movement there. Our attention is moving away from ourselves and creating some other thing. Everything is created only by our seeing it, by our perceiving it. So long as there's phenomena, phenomena are noise. The root of all noise is the rising of ourself as ego. So if we want to experience silence, we have to turn within and just be as we are.
Which is formless.
It is formless, yes.
That sounds like a void, doesn't it?
It sounds like a void, but yeah, it isn't. It's for fullness. Bhagavan said it's not sunya, it's purna. It is void in the sense that it's devoid of all phenomena. It's devoid of both subject and object. But it's the fullness of pure awareness, which alone is what is real. That's why Bhagavan, I understand what you say when you say nothing. That means there's no phenomena. But Bhagavan emphasizes that alone is real. What you alone are real.
I am it.
You are it, yes. Tattvamasi, you are that, you are it.
Which is formless. So basically one needs to stay in that position. One's mind has to rest there, so to speak.
So to speak, yes.
Wow, God.
What?
It's going to be difficult. It's difficult to stay there.
It is difficult because of our unwillingness. It's all a matter of willingness. If we are willing to let go of everything and cling to ourselves, then it's very easy. What can be easier than knowing oneself? To know other things takes an effort, where our attention has to go out towards some other thing. We've got to project it and see it. To know ourselves, no effort is necessary. It seems that effort is necessary because of our liking to go outwards. We're resisting that liking to go outwards. That seems to take effort. But when we know what we actually are, knowing ourselves and being ourselves is absolutely effortless. Because we're already that. There's never a moment when we are not what we actually are. When we're not aware of ourselves as we actually are. But in order to see that, we need to let go of everything else and turn within.
Yes, like putting myself in a room with no lights on and staying in there forever.
Yeah, yes. Except that the room we need to stay in is not darkness, it's light. It's the fullness of pure light. The light of pure awareness. Yes.
No, I just wanted to say it's such peace that once you get in there, then you wouldn't want anything to disturb it.
Yes.
If any slight arising of desire or fear or anything else disturbs that,
yes.
You wouldn't want that once you get there. But it's not comparing it to a dark room. It's, because it's so wonderful.
Yes. Bhagavan once jokingly said, everyone says it's so difficult to stop thinking. But my experience is the opposite. However hard I try, I'm not able to think. Because he is that. He's not able to he is that peace. Peace cannot disturb itself.
Letting go of attachments and desires
that is what we need to do. But there are certain subtle beauties that would be very, just something that's not actually associated with desire, but could even be sort of silencing for the mind. Some beauty of nature. You look up through some trees and you see the stars above, and you're kind of filled with a certain awe. That's not the same as wanting to be a millionaire and
No, but even that is a subtle desire, subtle liking. What we call beautiful is what is pleasing to us. What is pleasing to us is what we like. So if you had no likes and dislikes, there would be no beauty in anything except in yourself. So we do go from when we talk about people who want to be billionaires and things, these are very, very gross forms of desire. But as we go deeper and deeper, we have to face up to ever more subtle desires and attachments. But we have to, the only way to get rid of all desires and attachments, Bhagavan has given us a magic recipe. He's given us a silver bullet to solve all these problems. Cling to yourself, that's all that's needed. The more we cling to ourselves, the more everything else will drop off automatically. Other things seem to be real, they seem to be beautiful, they seem to be desirable, only because we attend to them. Attend only to yourself, and everything else will drop off.
Another way of looking at it is that beauty and everything that we see is seen by us.
Exactly, yes.
Who am I? Who is the seer?
Yes.
The seer doesn't exist.
Yes.
The seer is also a figment of imagination.
Yes.
So all this is impermanent or
empty. Yes.
So if you keep on trying to inquire, who am I?
Yes.
All these questions are resolved.
Yes. Bhagavan said, if one has seen the beauty within, nothing outside will ever appear beautiful.
So that person who's had a glimpse, mind you, maybe not. Because if you've had a glimpse, you're going to kill the ego anyway. Yes, okay. I have to stop here because
this idea of seeing a glimpse is a little bit misleading. It is true, as we progress deeper in this path, we get more and more clarity. And the more clarity we have, the more our desires and attachments will drop off. Clarity here means clarity of self-awareness. Clarity of awareness of ourself, not completely, but at least to some extent, distinguished from the adjuncts that we now take ourselves to be. It's not actually that we as a person see what we actually are. If we see what we actually are, that's the end of the story, where ego is eradicated. Yeah. But so the very language of glimpse is a misleading language. It's better to do. Bhagavan talks about clarity. What we are seeking is clarity. The more we attend to ourselves, the more that clarity of self-awareness will shine.
clarity of perception.
Yes, but perception, not perception of anything else, but perception of ourselves, self-perception. Clarity of awareness is best to say it. Because perception implies perceiving something else. Yeah.
Michael, there's a bit of contradiction here. So it happens in an instant, but to get to that instant, one has to purify one's mind, and so reality emerges when one is ready.
Yes.
And to be ready, it takes time. Well, as long as you assume it takes time, but obviously, if the mind is not pure enough, for reality to emerge, then it doesn't. So from that point of view, it is a process.
It's a process. It's a process of preparation. Yes. Sadhguru gave an analogy. It takes time to make gunpowder and to put it into a cannon and to put a ball there. All that's a process. When you ignite the gunpowder, the cannon will blast instantly. So all our sadhana, our so-called spiritual practice, is all just a preparation. As you say, it's a process.
Yes, so it's not instant from that point of view, but then, when it happens...
When it happens in an instant. There can be no halfway between knowing yourself as you actually are and knowing yourself as something else. Either you know what you actually are, or you know yourself as something else. So when we know what we actually are, in an instant, the story is finished. And then, once it's finished, we'll see there never was any story. Because we were always that.
There is that mystery of how has this situation arisen in the first place?
That is one question that even Bhagavan couldn't answer. But Bhagavan said asking such a question is like asking how was the son of a barren woman born? You could answer, if there was such a thing as the son of a barren woman, you could answer the question. But there can never be any such thing as a son of a barren woman. So it has never actually happened. Yeah, it seems to have happened so long as we're looking outwards. If we look within to see what we actually are, we'll see nothing ever happen. Bhagavan used to say, first find the ego, and then bring it to me, and then we can find out how it came into existence. If you find it, it disappears. Yes?
Is it true to say that you are a character in my dream and I'm a character in your dream, or are we characters in the same collective dream?
In a dream exists only in the view of the dreamer. There seem to be many people in a dream. The dreamer sees himself or herself as a character in the dream. So it sees all the other characters in the dream, it assumes they are also seeing. But the one who is seeing the dream, that is the only one. There is only one ego.
There's only one dreamer.
Only one dreamer. But so long as we're looking outwards, even the person we now seem to be is no more real than any other person. What is actually dreaming is ego. But ego dreams itself to be a person. Because it dreams itself to be a person, it thinks, I, this person, am seeing the world. It's not the person who's seeing the world, it's ego that is seeing the world. And because I take myself to be a person, I therefore take every other person to be a seer just like me. So it seems to me there are many people seeing this dream. But as soon as we wake up from a dream, you could have been walking down the street and suddenly found yourself naked and you're feeling very embarrassed. But as soon as you wake up, you'll know the embarrassment goes because you no longer think anyone saw you walking naked down the street.
So when there's one waking up, there can't be more wakings up?
No, there's only one.
So it's not as if you can wake up and I can wake up.
No, there's
one dream and one waking.
If the one dreamer wakes up, the whole dream comes to an end. But it's important also to remember, the dreamer is not a person. The dreamer dreams that it is a person in the dream, but that person is not actually the dreamer. So ego is not the person that it seems to be. That's why we need to separate. That's why it's very, very important. This is what in Sanskrit is called drik, drisya, viveka. Drik means the perceiver. Drisya means what is perceived. Viveka means distinguishing. So we need to distinguish ourselves, the seer, the witness, from everything that we witness. We are not anything but we see. Now it seems to us, I'm this person. But this person consists of what? Body, life, mind, intellect, will. These are all things seen by me. So how can I be these things?
So in my current dream, or this dream that seems to be happening, Ramana Maharshi was a character
in your dream
who seems to have woken up, but really there hasn't been any waking up yet.
No. Bhagavan gave an analogy for that. There's a belief that elephants are so afraid of lions, if an elephant has a dream about a lion, it will immediately wake up. So Bhagavan used to say, the guru is like the lion that appears in the elephant's dream. That lion is unreal, but it brings about a real awakening. So the name and form of guru is unreal. But what we see in this name and form is actually our own self has come to wake us up, so to speak. That is, it sounds a bit crude when we say that, but our own self has come to wake us up, as if our own self is something other than ourselves. It creates, but what that means is, our very nature is happiness, and our very nature is to love ourselves. We love to be happy. That's our real nature. But now we have risen as ego. We are seeking the happiness outside ourselves. That love, that underlying love that we have for happiness, that is what has appeared in the form of Bhagavan. That is what is called grace. That love for happiness, which is our real nature, that is what is called grace. So grace has appeared in the form of Bhagavan. Because we're looking outwards, he's appeared outside to tell us, look within. So when it is said Guru is like a lion in the dream of the elephant, that means the name and form of the Guru, the person who seems to be Guru. But what is shining through that person, that is our real nature, that is grace, that is love for happiness.
And is there more than one first person perspective within the ego that arises?
No, there's only one first person.
Which is mine.
Yes. First person means ego, though in English we say first person, it's not the person who is the first person, it is the ego who says I am this person who is the first person.
So there's only my perspective?
Yes.
For vision, for example?
Yes.
There's only this one view of this room right now. There aren't multiple views going on in a way.
But it seems to you, because the one who is seeing this dream seems to be a person and sees many other people, it seems to us that all these other people are seeing. So these other people are as real as the person we seem to be. That's why, so long as we're looking outwards, we shouldn't, if we see someone suffering, we shouldn't say, oh, that person is just a dream character. If we've got food, no, I'll keep the food for myself because they're only a dream character. That's a complete misunderstanding. The person for whom we're keeping the food is as much a dream character as the person to whom we're denying the food. That's why grace, that is, love and compassion are appropriate in a dream. So long as we see others, those others are as real as we are.
But there are differences between the body, which I see all the time below and in front of me, than the other body.
Yeah. That's why, generally, this is how selfishness arises. Because I seem to be this body, I'm more concerned about this body than I am about all these other bodies.
Why is there that difference?
Because this body is because I am this body. So it seems.
But there is that difference in perspective.
There is that difference in perspective because when we are dreaming, we always dream ourselves as a person in that dream.
Why is that?
That's just the nature of Maya. How could you see the world without having a point from which you're seeing it? It's just the very nature of things. But none of this is real. If you turn back to see who is seeing this, then the seer will disappear and everything that is seen will disappear along with it. And what will then remain is pure awareness. Pure awareness means awareness that is not aware of anything other than itself.
So basically we're trying to escape from a dream.
Yes, that's all.
Simple.
It's very simple. That's why Bhagavan says in this verse, knowing ourselves and being ourselves is just like waking up from a dream.
But there's no we, there's only I.
Bhagavan uses the term we as an inclusive form of the first person, because if he says I, that excludes you. Yeah. That's why he says we, to make it inclusive. But he's a singular we. Shiva, Shiva Om Namah, Om Namah Shiva.